In this video, I want to explain how to use API.ai to create a simple chatbot. The first thing, of course, you need to do is that you have to log in. If you don't have an account, you can just create one here. So once you create an account, you can basically log in. So after login, what you can see is called a console. So you'll see the console screen here. The first thing they're gonna ask you to do is create an agent here. So the agent here is basically a chatbot. So one chatbot is one agent. So we're going to create an agent. So creating agent is quite easy. So you provide a name, what name you want to use, and you can also choose some languages and what is the default time zone. So in our case, let's say our agent is air quality. So a lot of people concern more about air. So let's try to check the air quality. So we're gonna leave with the adult as the default. After creating agent, the next step is that we need to define the intent. Intent is basically when user provide a natural language. So from there, we want to extract the intent. In order to extract the intent, we need to define first. Let's create one. And similarly, we're gonna provide intent name. So let's say we want to check quality here. Check quality. Just I can save it. And then the way we're gonna define intent is quite interesting. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna provide some samples. So what user will say in order to match up with this intent. So we're gonna provide some examples. And then from the examples, the API.ai will automatically learn and extract the intents. So let's say in this case, let's try to provide a simple example. Say we're asking, oh, it's a natural that what is the air quality in, we need to provide location, right, so that we can get a little bit more accurate air quality information. So which city are you living, or which city do you want to know? So we're gonna provide some samples. Let's say Boston, right? So we, using this sentence, we can train this chatbot. So in this time, so something interesting happened. So first, the Boston, they highlighted it automatically. And then here, this is the parameters. We call it the parameter in this sentence, which is an important information you want to catch. And they automatically get this parameter name as a COC. And this entity, you can think this as a data type, if you are familiar with programming. So this data type is sys.geocity. So they figured it out that automatically. Quite interesting. And then after that, you save it. On right side of corner, really nice thing about the API.ai is that you can just test it right away here. See that your chatbot is enabled to understand what you're gonna say. So let's try it. Let's see here. So we give an example what is the air quality, but let's have some variations here. So simple one is we reduce it, the air quality in San Francisco. So different city, we ask them. And then here is the result that the agent figured it out. What they figured out here is following. So user said, what is the air quality in San Francisco? And then they figured out the intent is check quality, that what we defined in here. And the parameter that they clearly figured out what's the geocity and what's the value exactly. So they just figured it out correctly, which is great. And let's try to delete this one, and let's try to what is the air quality in Jeju. Jeju is a very beautiful island in Korea, and we can enter it. Unfortunately, in this case, they didn't figure out Jeju as a city automatically. In this case, you don't have to worry about it. Basically, what you can do is that you can just select these ones and then just wait a little bit. Then you can see these pop-ups. Basically, these pop-ups, they provide the entity, system entity, it's a predefined entity, which is similar to the data type. And then you can select one of them if something is matching. Otherwise, you can just create a new entity. So basically define what is the type of the data, type of the parameter you are expecting. You can define it. Fortunately, in our case, this is a city, right? So we gonna select geo city. So then it's more or less the same. So we can just save this one, and let's try to add a more parameters. So we want to know tomorrow, and not only today. So we can say how's the air quality in Boston tomorrow. So in this case, what we got here is that in the Boston, they automatically figure out this is the city, so they get the GeoCity. Also, it's because it's tomorrow, they understand that, oh, this is another parameter, which is date. So they automatically figure out and highlight it. Once again, if they don't catch it, you just select a certain part, and then you can just define the parameter and the type, entity type. Alright, so let's test a little bit more. In this case, let's say we can provide a completely different. Do you know the air quality in, where do you want to go? Did you save? We have to save it. Air quality in San Jose tomorrow. Okay, so we're gonna do this, and then hopefully they can figure out everything, right? So here, let's say they didn't they figured out the intent, but they didn't figure out the date correctly. So this happens sometimes. What you need to do is that save multiple times. Then let's try exactly the same thing or more. So change a little bit. What's the air quality in San Francisco tomorrow? Let's see. Hopefully they can figure out. So in this case, they correctly figure out the date and the city. It's good. Alright, so if the users usually provide all the information at the first time, it's good, but usually it's not the case because they don't know how to really use the bots correctly. So sometimes they don't really give us the full information. So for example, here what's the air quality, right? So they didn't really give us the necessary parameters. So here, see what's gonna happen. So it's good. So the first thing is that they figured out the intent correctly, but unfortunately we didn't get any values. So in our cases, if you don't know the city or date, it's a little bit difficult to provide the correct information to the users. So it's not very good for users experience. So there are two ways to address this problem. The first solution is that we're gonna, like a programming function, we're gonna provide a default value so that even though users didn't give us any information about it, we just use default value. So one example is date. For example, if they don't provide any date value, we can assume that this is just today. So how we're gonna do this is that you go to parameter and then see a little bit of more setting kind of parameters buttons here. You click it and you can set the default value here. Here in the default value we can say today, as a default value. Save it. That's good. And then here, that's a one way, so we can just save it. So let's give the same the query. What is the air quality? So as you see here, so in this case, even though we didn't provide the date, so they got the today as the default value. This is good. So the second solution to this is that we're gonna make this as required. So that means that user, you must provide this one. But unfortunately, user, they may not provide that as the very first time. Then here, what we can do is that if some information which is marked as required is missing, we can ask that information again and again until we get it. So here, this is called a prompt. So we gonna provide some text for the prompts. For example, here the location is missing, so we can say, how about the location? Or we can just make a little bit of variations to make both as something like a real. So we can provide a multiple, or give me the location, or where do you live. So we're gonna provide as many as you want, and then the agent will select random prompt. So in this case, let's try it. And here we said, what's the air quality? Again, did you save? Let's save. Let's try to save it. And then you have to wait a little bit. It takes a little bit of time to really fully train the model. And then what is the air quality? So we asked it. And then what's happening here is that because this is required, right? So it's required. They know it's required. So what they do here is that the response is just where. They ask more information. So as this response, what we can do is that, okay, we are in LA, so we type in LA in this case. So we just type LA. Then here now they got the full information here. So what they got is that, okay, we got the intent correctly, and then now the today's default value, and then they got Los Angeles as this geocity. So correctly they got it, which is very nice. They can handle this missing information, and then they can ask more information about the required parameters. They can fill in. And then here, if the response is quite simple, we can provide a speech response. So we can use even the variable geocity and then say looks good, right? So hopefully it looks good. And here also we can have different. So I think we can make many different variations. It's better. It looks like really more natural. Geocity, and then we can use date maybe. Very good, something like that, or let's say it's something okay. So we can save this one, and now let's try. So do you know the air quality? Let's try this one again. So let's see if they can get it correctly. Alright, so they don't get tomorrow part correctly, but mostly they got it, right? So here they can have a speech response. So not only for the text, also we can actually they can have engine that can read, and you can listen to this, and also they can understand my English, let's say. So not only just the text, so you can provide something. Okay, let's do it again. All right, okay, are you ready? Go. So we can say, how's the air quality in Boston? See, let's try again. How's the air quality in Boston? So probably this interferes with my microphone and it doesn't work at this demo, but you can actually clearly test it. So you can speak and they can understand your language. Let's try one more time. how's the air quality in Boston? Yeah, it seems like my video recording software and this microphone has some issue. All right, so that's good. So using this, you can basically do something simple chatting. Now we try to something more interesting. Let's say we're gonna add this one. How about tomorrow as another example? Tomorrow as another example. So here is the same thing. So automatically they figure out the date. This is date parameter. It's good. We save it, and then we say what's the air quality in Boston, right? You talk about this Boston, and then they said Boston today is okay, so it's a good response. So you can hear even this today is okay. Now what we want to do is that we can ask how about tomorrow, right? What you expect is that because you are talking about the Boston, so hopefully they're gonna say Boston tomorrow is okay, or they get Boston and tomorrow. So let's see how they're gonna do. So here, as you see, this is not really happening as we expected. So here, let's see. So what you see here is that we said how about tomorrow, right? But we talked about the Boston, so hopefully they could understand what's going on, but it's not the case. They ask where, they ask location. So it's kind of stupid, right? Because this spot does not have any context. So we were talking about the Boston, but has no idea. So in this case, really no fun. It's not very good service. So in order to solve this problem, so what we need to do is we have to define the context, which is something like a global variable or sort of memory. So the way we're gonna do in this API.ai is that we need to provide some special name for the variables that you're gonna use for the context. So here the value is automatically given, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna use sharp, and then you're gonna provide the context name. In our case, it's the LOC and the variable name. So let's see a little bit in detail. So here, what we need is that first we need the sharp here, saying that oh, I'm gonna use this one as a context, and then this LOC is the context name. And this geocity, and then you're gonna use dot, and then you use this geocity as the same as the parameter name. So it should be the same. It should match. Okay, this is parameter name. You must name this value like this: context name, sharp context name dot, and the given parameter name. And that's it. And once you define the variable, the parameters in this way, and the next thing you need to do is that you have to define here context. Here go up, and then you see this define context, click it, you're gonna define the out. The reason why we are using out is that from a conversation, they're gonna create a context. So what's the name of the context? LOC. So that's what we said. So that's it. And then what we're gonna do is that we're gonna save. So then we set everything. Let's try again. What's the air quality in Boston? We ask that first. So usually it takes a little bit of time. So let's try again. So we save. What's the air quality in Boston? We save. I think everything is correct. Let's change a little bit. How's the air quality in Boston? Let's try to do this one. Okay, it doesn't work for somehow. Let's see what's wrong with this one. I think everything's okay. So just it takes a little bit of time. So what we need to do is that probably in my experience, we need to save a couple of times. You see the machine learning is turning, and then I think it's something is really done. So let's try what's the airport in Boston. Okay, so here we are. So let's try again. So what's the airport in Boston? We we ask this question to the agent, and something interesting is happening. So basically, what's happening here is that we ask these ones, and they said the Boston looks okay, but here you see something different here, right? Because they now have context. They memorize this context. So what we're gonna do here is that we're gonna now ask the question, how about tomorrow? We ask this question. So hopefully they remember that we were talking about Boston. So here, let's see. So good. So you see here, what they now figured out is that we are talking about the Boston. So they figured out that now we are talking about the Boston. So the response is Boston looks good. And then they figured out the intent, of course, and date, which is tomorrow, and city location correctly. This is coming from the context, memory from previous conversation. So using this context, probably we can make this agent a little bit smart, understand what we're talking about. And as a result, what they're gonna provide here is that they're gonna provide this JSON. So once we have this JSON, this includes all the information they figured out automatically from the user input, which is natural language. So using this, probably you can do almost everything that you want, right? So in this case, we just make the result up. So the result is not really the data. It's not coming from data. We just made this result. For what if you want to get the result from real services, external APIs or real database? So in order to do that, what they provide is that called the webhook. So the idea of the webhook is something like this. So once we have natural languages given, so what they do, so what API.ai will generate, figure out the intents and figure out the parameters, and eventually they're gonna generate the JSON that I just showed you. And what you can do is that you can make your own service, which is called Webhook, and which you will get as a JSON as an input. So in this input, you know what's the intent, what's the parameters, things like that. And then you do your own process. Maybe you ask a database, you ask external APIs, and then as a result, you're gonna generate another JSON file here. And you pass this one to API.ai, they will automatically do that, and then it will generate another response, which is a natural language. So this is end-to-end service, and here what you need to do is that you have to provide this part. So this is your work. You have to create this one, and then they're gonna explain how you're gonna create. So here we have some examples. This is the input of your service. So input you are expecting is something like that, and then this is the output that you need to generate after getting the data. So I think the most important thing is that here the speech text. So you're gonna generate or create text or display text. You're gonna create some way to display, and then if you want to carry on some context, so you can create a context out field, and then you can provide some context. The form, what kind of format is here some examples. I think this context is the most important part. You can see what we need. And even they provide some examples source code which is written in Python. So basically this one Python file can do all the job. It's a Flask application, and here what we have is basically get the request and extract some parameters, and then once we have parameters, we can create a result by asking database or external APIs and so on. And once again, this is the part that once we figured it out or everything, we just return this one as a JSON format, and that's it. It's very simple. And once you have this service, what you're gonna do is that you go to fulfillment, and then here what they do is that you can enable this webhook, and then you can provide this the endpoint of your service. So, and that's it. Then they're gonna send this created the JSON from user text to your service, and then expecting some result from your service. Okay, and one last thing I want just to briefly mention is that integrations. So once you finish all these beautiful chatbot, simply what you can do is that you just there is an agent page, so you can just make it available, publish it, and you click this URL, or you let the other your friends or your users to this URL, then it's good. So basically, yeah, let's see, it takes a while and it's up. So this web page or this chatting box is basically a bot interface to your bot. So you can say, what's the air quality in Boston? Let's see this one. So for somehow they didn't get it, so let's give the Boston. So it takes a little bit while. Then they're gonna say Boston looks good, right? So how about tomorrow? Let's say this, they can understand this context. So Boston looks good. So they understand it is tomorrow as well. So this is one way, but maybe not many people are coming to your URL. So the better way is that you can use the Facebook or Slack integrations. So you just click one and you can see the settings here. So it will explain what you need to provide, and then you can connect with your Facebook Messenger, and then the input of Facebook Messenger was sent to API.ai, and then they do process and then return the messages to the Facebook Messenger, which is very, very nice. Okay, so I think this video hopefully basically introduced the concept of how to make chatbot using the API.ai. Hopefully you can now create your wonderful chatbot. Thanks very much.